you get stressed out when people start talking about Christmas and preparation, you might start sweating a little bit, your heart starts beating a little, and you want to go run and put your head in the sand. Well, this episode is for you. My name is Dara Thomason, and I am the Quilters Coach. And this is episode 173, Getting Ready for Christmas and Kicking Out the Stress. Okay, I totally hear you. A lot of us really love Christmas, and some of us don't, and that's okay. But today's episode is really going to talk about what will it take to have the most amazing Christmas for you. So depending on what that looks like for you, you get to decide because you are your own boss. And what your best Christmas looks like is going to be very different from anyone else. And by the way, that's permission granted. You can decide whatever Christmas looks like for you. So that could mean that your whole front porch and house is decorated to the T, or it could mean that you just have a small little ornament and you call it good. This is your life, your way. So today's episode is really going to look at how do you kick out the stress. And if you're listening to this when it comes out, of course, it's the beginning of November. We're going to give some lead time. If you're listening to this any other time, you're going to have some really amazing takeaways. Plus, you're going to learn a new tool about neuroscience. It's going to help you to create this goal. But before we dive into the meat of this podcast, I wanted to share a win that happened in the life of one of the members in my membership. And because I really love focusing on wins, it's actually a way to rewire your brain and to create new habits. Now, your personality is your personal reality. So when you can actually see you're creating these wins for yourself. So I hope that as you're listening to this podcast, it's very predictable. I'm always going to do the introduction. I'm always going to share a win, and then I go into the meat of it. So I hope that every time you listen to this podcast, you're thinking, I wonder what win she's going to share today. And actually, one of the things that's so cool about this podcast, about my membership, is there are women just like you who are listening to the podcast. And then finally, they make a decision to join the membership. And then they become the win. I started sharing their examples because they finally decided to come inside the membership, get the tools, learn the tools, get the support in learning them, and then they become the person who is now being shared on the podcast. It's like a full circle moment. And I would love to do that for you. In fact, I'm taking a course with Jody Moore right now. And she said, I want you to decide right now what the testimonial is going to be. So she has this program that I'm taking. She said, write your testimonial from this program already, even though I haven't done it yet. And so I've been doing that, and it's really cool. And I have had the experience where I have been the testimonial for other people's programs, and it feels really nice. But doing that ahead of time is going to be really helpful. So then it's kind of like a little foreshadow of what we're going to be learning today. So this is a win from one of my members. She actually came to my retreat. I do a very small in-person retreat once a year. And she came and she really learned a lot about herself. And she realized that she spends a lot of time by herself, but not with herself. And so she's by herself, but she's distracted with Instagram or Facebook or watching TV or watching a YouTube channel or something. She's actually not being with herself. And this is like a whole new thing that she's learning how to be with herself. And so she has this epiphany and decides, okay, how am I going to do this? And one of the big wins for her was she realized that the time that she's spending isn't making the connections with herself and others as much as she would like. And so her granddaughter had a big track meet or cross country meet. So she decided, if I go to that cross country meet, I can connect with her and with myself as a grandma. And it's been so awesome for her. And so she's putting aside she's prioritizing the kind of life that she wants to have, and she's having so many more connections. She doesn't feel alone. And so now, of course, the ripple effects is she's being more connected with her family. Her family gets happier and more interesting version of their grandma or their wife or their daughter, the mother. And it's been really fun to watch her progress in that way. So if you are feeling like you want to have a little bit more connection with the people in your life, um, these tools will help you to do. Okay. All right, let's dive into the meat of this episode. Okay, so if you're watching the YouTube, you can see the worksheet. If you don't have the worksheet, you can just click below. And if you're on my website, you can get that. And if you have any problems accessing the worksheet, you can just email support@Dara Thomason and we will send it to you. And again, it's Dara, Dara, and the last name is Tom, Tom, on. Okay. So, what do you want to feel at the end of Christmas? Yeah, I'm asking, what is it? So, at the end of the day, when everything is all said and done, and you're sitting on the couch, or you're sitting at the table, or you're doing the dishes, or you're wherever you are, what is that feeling that you want? So, just spend a minute because everything we do in life is because we want to feel a certain way. When I was a little girl, um, I've always loved Christmas. And I actually have had a hate-love relationship with Christmas. But I just love the excitement of Christmas. And I remember for a few Christmases in a row, somehow the TV would have the Sound of Music. And everyone was off. It's probably around 6:30, 7 o'clock. And it just seemed, I think it was like 2 or 3 years in a row I had this happen where I just laid on the couch. And for some reason, we brought the TV upstairs. Usually the TV would be in the basement, but my dad, I guess, brought it upstairs. And so I could lay on the nice couch in the nice living room with a tree and just watch Sound of Music. And in my memory, my dad was there. And everything felt peaceful and calm. And when I was talking about that relationship with Christmas, I often felt like I'm the third of 6 kids, and the presents my mom gave me didn't necessarily reflect who I was. I didn't really feel like I was known. And so that's a whole other podcast. But so when I think of that feeling, obviously I'm letting myself feel the feelings. They're coming. And it felt like even though I would feel discouraged or frustrated about the presents and I felt disappointed, at the end of the day, I felt love, I felt connection, I felt like I was able to experience that. And that is one of my goals as a mom with my own kids of having those experiences where they feel completely loved and connected and they feel known. And so and I'm not even going to edit out the crying or the pauses because I think that as we really become who we want to be, it's a process of really truly becoming vulnerable with that version of us as little girls. And as we are now, as we're growing up. Oh my God. Yesterday I heard someone say, just because we're older doesn't mean we're fully baked. We're not, don't put yourself out for pasture. But I love that fully baked because it's like we're always working on like becoming that next version of ourselves. So I want you to have that emotion of what do you want to feel at the end of Christmas and just go there and maybe do that exercise that I just did of like really feeling like love And I think I have extra emotion because last Sunday I was on a layover. I made a purposeful layover in Calgary, and I was going to connect with so I could see my dad, and he has dementia, and he has the dementia shuffle. And my dad normally is this tall, strong, 6'4" man. And now with his shuffle, he's really bent over, and he's maybe like 5'10". And it's just really hard to see um, how different it is. So, and like I always say, it's important to feel all the feelings, but just allowing the feelings and letting them just be. And a feeling is just a vibration in your body. I allow the feeling, it just goes through me, and then I'm able to move on. So now we want to set the bar of what do you want to feel? So I want you to write that down. So you want to feel joy, you want to feel peace, you want to feel connection, you want to feel satisfaction, maybe you want to feel accomplished. Like, what are all those feelings? And I want you to get very specific about them. Now, one of my clients I just met with yesterday, she said, Dara, typically I have three emotions, and they were, oh, I wrote them down. Her three emotions, generally speaking, are anger, fear, and sadness. So she's only been in the program for about 2 weeks. So she was like, I really needed to increase my understanding of emotions. And so she went to I recommended a wheel. And then in my program, I have the module 7 is a deep dive into emotion. But she realized how often her inner dialogue just kept her in those states of sad, anger, and fear. So if we are all our emotional IQ is all pretty low because we really weren't taught how to feel our feelings. So I would recommend that you can go to, oh, actually, that's what I'll do. I'll just link an emotion wheel here on the podcast. So then you can just go there and that will help you to expand those emotions. So take a minute and look at those emotions and then be very specific. Another thing that I do with my clients is because of the model that we use, um, it's actually called the model. And we have a thought, the thought creates the feeling. And we will actually go and look up words in the dictionary. Like, are you frustrated? Are you disappointed? Are you discouraged? And so it's really great to go and look at those definitions. Then you can see, oh, yes. Okay, yeah, I actually am frustrated. It's not discouraged, it's frustrated. And when you know that, it's going to be so helpful. Your body will be like, oh, okay, this is what frustration feels like. I can allow it to pass through me, no problem. I'm a human having a human experience. Okay. So now I want you to write, what do you typically feel at the end of Christmas? So if you ever come to any of my free trainings, quite often I will have a picture of a girl on a cliff. And so here she is on the cliff. And then there's this kind of like gorge or like a valley or like, this crevice. And there's, water underneath and it's very dangerous. You look down and it's kind of scary. But then on the other side of this, there's the version of you who you want to be. Okay. So there's we have to build a bridge between like the typical feeling at the end of Christmas to who we really want to be. And my job as a coach is to help you bridge those gaps. And so as you're listening to this podcast, I'm so glad that you're here, first of all. And second of all, it's so much more doable to create that bridge and to become that next version of yourself. In the month of September, I was able to go to Sundance and be a speaker at this big event. Jenna Kircher was there, which was awesome. She has over 1 million followers on Instagram. She's generated like $20 million in revenue selling online courses. She's considered a pretty big deal. And I was the beginning speaker for it. It was very exciting. I became the person I wanted to be. 5 years ago, that was never possible because I didn't have the expertise to really be able to speak at an event like that. And B, I wouldn't even know how to put myself out there to be considered to have such an amazing experience. So I bridged that gap for myself so that I could have these new experiences to help and serve other people. Okay. So same thing with my weight. Like all of these, and these are all happening within the membership for these women. It's not just me. I have all the tools that the membership has. It's just a matter of like, I'm really good at using the tools. And because of that, I am able to create those kinds of results for myself. And that is all available for you 100%. Okay. So now we have the before and after. We have that, like, this is how I'm feeling and I don't like it. This is how I want to feel. Now, this is an interesting question. Why do you do this dance every year? Why do you entertain the I'm not good enough? What's wrong with me? I could never be that person. I'm just not organized. I'm just like this. I just leave things to the last minute. I always bite off more than I can chew. Why do you do that dance? It's the same thing with food. You're like, "Oh, I'm going to be good this year." And then what do you find yourself doing? Okay. So now I want you to ask, what needs to change? Now, this is where I have this fun exercise. And in the show notes, I've linked two articles. One is from Michael Phelps and his coach. And I remember hearing on a podcast probably 5 years ago. It's actually the podcast, I can link it here as well. um, Gotta write down the things I'm gonna link. Okay, it's called The Happiness Project. And this is actually a professor from Yale. And it was interesting because here she is at this high end university, right? And so it's the cream of the crop that go to Yale. And as she was teaching more and more that she was teaching there, more and more she saw all these kids who were, the cream of the crop. Like they were the elite of the elite. And they had more anxiety and depression and stress than ever. And she was realizing how much pressure all these kids put on themselves and they don't have the tools. So being a professor, she thought, well, I'm going to create a course that's going to teach them how to be happy because they've kind of missed the mark here. So she has this. So she decided to create this course called the Happiness Project, and it's for free. Anyone can take it now. But there was so much demand, and the law of the university was you could have lots of different classes, but everyone that was taking that class all had to write the exam at the same time. And it was so many people that they didn't have one room. And the other law is the professor has to be present during the exam. And so she was literally running because the exam was at the same time, but she had to appear at all the different places. So she had to run around the campus to make sure she went to every single sitting of that exam in that 2-hour block. It's so fascinating. A little bit of a side note, but hey. So she actually gave this example of Michael Phelps as the importance of visualization. And this is a tool I'm going to be teaching about with neuroscience and the time machine. And so in this example, she shared about when Michael Phelps, so his coach, Michael Phelps has always struggled with mental health. And so learning how to relax and be chill was a difficulty. So he gave his mom a book on relaxation at night. And so he did it every night and he worked on it so he could go to bed very easily. And that was awesome. But he also did these visualizations over and over with the race. And so he would imagine, okay, backstroke, I have this many strokes before I have to do the turn, or breaststroke, I have this many strokes if my bathing suit ripped, or if my goggles got water in it, or whatever, this is what I do. And he just visualized his race over and over. And of course, when he's actually physically doing the swimming, he would visualize it as well. But he would sit dry land and visualize it. Well, during the Olympics, one of his races, his goggles did fill up with water. And he was upset, of course, because it's, a big deal. But his instincts took over because he'd visualized it so much. And he was able to finish the race. And he actually got a goal. He broke a record in that race because it was just so automatic. And so in life coaching, because we are looking at our thoughts and we are able to resolve the thoughts that don't serve us, and we're able to work through that, I often will go to my future self. And so we use neuroscience. This is not me making it up. There's lots of scientific proof, and I've given an article also that has some reference to that in the show notes. But so one of the things that I want you to imagine is to go to the end of Christmas. And I want you to visualize, and I'm going to actually talk you through a visualization. So you can do this with me. So before we start it, I just want you to take a deep breath. Just take a nice deep breath, put both feet on the ground. If you're in a place that's distractions, I recommend that you get out of that. You can do this visualization every single day to prepare for Christmas, but we're going to do this together. All right. Okay. So take another deep breath. Now I want you to close your eyes. That'll be helpful. And I want you to imagine you're sitting on your couch in your living room or your favorite chair. And you're sitting there and you're looking at the tree. You're looking at the decorations, if they're there. If they're not there, you're looking at your hands. You're looking at your lap. You're looking at the surroundings. So maybe you're at your daughter's house or your a friend's house, wherever you are. I just want you to imagine you're in that room. Now I want, whatever room you're in, I want you to imagine, what is it going to smell like? Will there be some scented candles? Will there be like the smell of a Christmas tree? Now I want you to imagine, are you warm? Do you have a blanket on your lap? Is there a fire potentially by you? I want you to imagine, what do you see? Maybe you're taking a drink of water. Now I want you to think about, well, how did the day reflect back on the day? What went well on that day? So just name 5 things that went really well. You had your car packed with all the gifts, or you prepared that special salad and it was well received. What were the things that went really well? Maybe you had a phone call with one of your brothers from far away and it was a really nice connection with him. Okay, I want you to have at least 5 things that went really well. And now I want you to imagine 3 things that weren't so great. So maybe you were a little bit late and you felt a little hustle to get to where you're going, or maybe you slept wrong, so you felt a little off. Maybe you ate some things that you hadn't planned to eat, and so now you're feeling some guilt. Okay, just 3 things. Okay, so just take it. Remember to breathe. We're breathing. Now I want you to ask yourself, what do you feel right now? And now ask, what was a feeling you wanted to feel at the end of the day? And how did you achieve that? So when you ask yourself these questions and you go into your body, I want you just to feel whatever feeling is there. So just take a breath into that feeling. Okay. And now I'm going to ask you a question that you might not have thought of before. Being now in your future self, what wisdom or advice does she have for you for today? What does your future wise self say that you should do now that you can have the best Christmas experience? and then listen to her. She's very wise. All right. So today's episode, we talked about going into the time machine. We talked about neuroscience because our brain doesn't know what's real or what's not real. So like, for example, when we watch a movie, we start crying, we get excited, we go on this roller coaster ride, and because our brain doesn't know that it's actually not real. Okay. So that's the part of neuroscience that's really exciting. And so I want you to plan ahead. I want to feel these things at Christmas. I know that I typically have felt these things, but I don't have to do the dance anymore. So I can say no. And if I don't say no and then I start feeling resentment, I can just give myself forgiveness, right? I can actively edit my Christmas traditions. So I have given podcast episodes in the past where I used to think I had to do all this baking, and now I just give it to my mom to do with my kids. I just don't do Christmas baking. It's like no big deal. I'm not a bad mom because I don't do that. There's a lot of things that I thought I had to do at Christmas, but I actually don't. And we even do things like we go to Tofino before Christmas. That's a place where we go surfing and we have fun and we just relax before the holidays even start happening to give ourselves that time so we're not all hassled and frazzled before the holidays. So we can make changes. We can do that. So I'm encouraging you to make a plan now. Even if you're listening to this in July, you can make a plan. You can start visualizing. It's going to be so helpful. All right. I have a lot of free trainings coming up in the month of November. And then I have an amazing masterclass coming in December at the beginning. That's going to set you up. That's going to help you reinforce a lot of these things. So go check them out, register, and don't forget, you are your best investment. All right. I will see you next week.
If you aren't loving your current life and hear yourself saying things like, I should be happier, I should be getting more done, or question how productive and fulfilled you are, this podcast is for you. I'm Dara Thomason, professional quilter turned life coach for quilters, where I show you how to overcome obstacles like perfectionism, people pleasing, overeating, overcomplicating life, so that you can really start to enjoy your life by learning and using tools for your brain to help you transform your everyday living. Are you ready to make these changes? I'm ready to help. Let's start your transformation one UFO at a time.